The town of Miller's Crossing was quiet. It was the kind of quiet that spoke of long, hot summers and even longer, colder winters. The kind of quiet that settled deep in your bones and made you want to stay put. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Sheriff Tommy had lived in Miller's Crossing his whole life. He knew every crook and cranny, every smile and every frown. He liked it that way. Life was simple, predictable, or at least it was until the day she arrived. The town had a rhythm, a heartbeat that pulsed with the changing seasons. Summers were filled with the hum of cicadas and the distant laughter of children playing in the fields. Winters brought a stillness, a hush that blanketed the town in a serene, almost magical silence. The people of Miller's Crossing were used to this rhythm, and they found comfort in its predictability. The streets were lined with quaint houses, each with its own story to tell. The general store, the diner, the post office, all were fixtures in the lives of the townsfolk. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the outside world felt like a distant memory. In Miller's Crossing, everyone had a role to play. The baker knew your favorite bread, the barber knew your life story, and the sheriff knew your secrets. It was a close-knit community, bound together by shared history and mutual respect. Sheriff Tommy was the cornerstone of this community. With his weathered face and steady gaze, he was a man who commanded respect. He had seen the town through its ups and downs, and he took pride in keeping it safe. He knew the town like the back of his hand. Every creaky floorboard, every hidden nook, nothing escaped his notice. He was a fixture in the lives of the townsfolk, a reassuring presence in an ever-changing world. Sheriff Tommy liked the predictability of his life. He liked knowing what each day would bring. But all of that changed when she arrived. The stranger stepped off the Greyhound bus, a solitary figure silhouetted against the setting sun. She was tall and slender, draped in a long black coat, her face obscured by a veil, a red veil. The color was like a splash of blood against the dusty canvas of their town. It was a shock to the senses, a discordant note in the familiar melody of Miller's Crossing. A chill wind whipped around her, sending dust devils swirling down Main Street. The townsfolk watched in stunned silence as she made her way down the street, her head held high. The woman, tall and slender, was draped in a long black coat, her face obscured by a veil, a red veil. The color was like a splash of blood against the dusty canvas of their town. The color was like a splash of blood against the dusty canvas of their town. It was a shock to the senses, a discordant note in the familiar melody of Miller's Crossing. It was a shock to the senses, a discordant note in the familiar melody of Miller's Crossing. As she walked past, her head held high, an unsettling silence fell over the townsfolk gathered at the diner across the street. As she walked past, her head held high, an unsettling silence fell over the townsfolk gathered at the diner across the street. They watched her with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, wondering who she was and what had brought her to their quiet town. The woman, who introduced herself as Delia, wasted no time in finding a place to stay. She rented the old Blackwood house on the edge of town, a place shunned by locals due to whispers of past tragedies. The house stood on a hill overlooking Miller's Crossing, its windows like vacant eyes staring out over the town. The red veil never left her face. It became a symbol, a beacon of unease that followed her everywhere. It hid her features, her expressions. This only served to amplify the curiosity and fear that she evoked in the townspeople. At first, they whispered about her in hushed tones, speculating about her past, her reasons for coming to Miller's Crossing. Some said she was running from something, while others believed she was looking for something or someone. But no matter the speculation, one thing was certain. Delia, with her red veil and silent demeanor, had brought an unsettling change to their quiet town. The change was subtle at first. It crept in like a thief in the night, unnoticed and uninvited. It started with the dreams. Dreams that were more vivid than reality, more unsettling than any nightmare. Vivid, unsettling dreams that plagued the townspeople. Each night, they were transported to a world where shadows whispered secrets and fears took form. Dreams filled with forgotten memories, long-buried secrets, and a pervasive sense of dread. It was as if the very fabric of their subconscious was being unraveled, thread by thread. They'd wake up in a cold sweat, their hearts pounding, the image of the red veil imprinted on their minds. Then, the arguments began. Small disagreements that quickly escalated into full-blown confrontations. Old grudges resurfaced, fueled by a sudden surge of anger and resentment. It was as if the dreams had unlocked a hidden reservoir of bitterness and rage. Neighbors who had lived in harmony for years turned on each other, their faces contorted with rage. The bonds of community were fraying, and the sense of unity that once defined Miller's Crossing was disintegrating. The usual peace of Miller's Crossing was slowly unraveling, thread by thread. The streets, once filled with laughter and camaraderie, now echoed with tension and mistrust. Sheriff Tommy, sitting on the porch of his office, watched the town descend into chaos. He had seen many things in his years of service, but nothing like this. He saw the fear in the eyes of the people he had sworn to protect, heard the desperation in their voices. They looked to him for answers, for reassurance, but he had none to give. He knew he had to do something, but what? The source of the unease was elusive, like a shadow that slipped through his fingers every time he tried to grasp it. The answer, he felt, lay with the woman in the red veil. She had appeared around the same time the dreams began, and her presence seemed to be at the heart of the town's troubles. He could no longer ignore the whispers that followed her like a shadow. Whispers of dark magic, of curses, of a past that refused to stay buried. The whispers that spoke of her strange arrival, her unsettling presence, and the growing darkness that seemed to emanate from her. Sheriff Tommy knew that to save his town he would have to confront the woman in the red veil and uncover the truth behind the unease that had settled over Miller's Crossing. The more Sheriff Tommy observed Delia, the more his suspicions grew. She kept to herself, rarely venturing into town except for essential supplies. And when she did, her eyes, hidden behind the red veil, seemed to follow everyone, observing their every move. He tried to talk to her, to understand why she had come to Miller's Crossing, but each time he approached the Blackwood house, a cold dread would grip his heart, urging him to turn back. The house seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy, a silent warning that sent shivers down his spine. One day he found a small, intricately carved wooden box hidden beneath the floorboards of his office. He didn't remember putting it there, and a strange, almost primal fear pulsed through him as he reached for it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a single red feather, the same shade as the veil Delia wore. As he stared at the feather, a cold realization washed over him. Delia was not just a stranger passing through. She was at the heart of the darkness spreading through Miller's Crossing. The nightmares intensified, bleeding into waking hours. The once peaceful town was now a place of dread and unease. People could no longer distinguish between reality and the horrors that plagued their minds. The boundary between the conscious and the subconscious had blurred, leaving everyone in a state of perpetual fear. Now, the townsfolk weren't just haunted by dreams, but by waking visions of their deepest fears and darkest secrets. Every corner of the town seemed to whisper their hidden anxieties, and every shadow seemed to harbor their unspoken dreads. The air was thick with tension, and the once vibrant community was now a ghost of its former self. The veil, it seemed, had a way of amplifying what lay hidden in their hearts. It was as if the very fabric of their reality had been twisted, bringing forth the darkest corners of their souls. The veil did not just reveal their fears, it magnified them, making them inescapable and all-consuming. Old Man Hemlock, who had lived a solitary life on the outskirts of town, was plagued by visions of the fire he accidentally started as a child. The flames danced in his mind, relentless and unforgiving, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had shaped his life. The fire that had claimed the lives of his parents. The guilt and sorrow he had buried deep within himself now surfaced with a vengeance. leaving him no respite. Every night, he relived the horror, and every day, he saw the accusing eyes of his parents in every flicker of light. Driven to the edge by guilt and terror, he confessed his secret to the townsfolk. His voice, raw with pain and remorse, echoed through the town square. The weight of his confession hung heavy in the air, a testament to the power of the veil and the depths of human suffering, his voice raw with pain and remorse. The townspeople listened in stunned silence, their own fears momentarily forgotten as they absorbed the magnitude of his revelation. The veil had not only exposed his secret, but it also forced the community to confront the fragility of their own lives. Young Sarah, the baker's daughter, found herself reliving the day her best friend drowned in the river. The memory, once a distant sorrow, now consumed her every waking moment. She could hear the desperate cries for help, feel the icy water, and see the lifeless eyes of her friend staring back at her. The memory seared into her mind by the guilt of not being able to save her. The veil had turned her regret into a living nightmare, one that she could not escape. Every ripple in the water, every gust of wind seemed to mock her failure, deepening her sorrow and despair. The veil had ripped open old wounds, forcing them to confront the ghosts of their past. It was a relentless force, dragging their deepest fears into the light and leaving them exposed and vulnerable. The town was no longer a sanctuary but a battleground of the mind, where every soul fought against their own demons. Sheriff Tommy knew he had to act fast. The town was teetering on the brink of chaos, consumed by fear and suspicion. He could see the cracks forming in the community, the trust eroding, and the bonds that once held them together fraying at the edges. The town was teetering on the brink of chaos, consumed by fear and suspicion. The sheriff could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had to find a way to lift the veil's curse before it destroyed everything they held dear. And he was certain that Delia, the woman in the red veil, held the key to their salvation, or their destruction. Her presence was a mystery, her motives unclear, but the sheriff knew that she was somehow connected to the veil's power. The fate of the town rested in unraveling her secrets and understanding the true nature of the veil.